Taking you up until 2 o'clock. Streaming live on YouTube on 560 WQAM, Miami 560 WQAM on Twitch, and of course on the Odyssey app. That is where you guys can find us. Very excited to have our next guest in studio. Friend of the show, Peter Kahn. He is a good friend. We've had him on many times.
Been a minute.
Been a minute. Haven't had you on in a while, Peter. So it's good to have you back, man.
Always good to be back here. I love coming on with you guys. You guys are like knowledgeable boxing guys. So I
fake it. He knows more than me.
You got a lot better. it used to be all emotional with him, but now it's like, no, you know what you're talking about. Yeah. But no, you guys are like, Brendan covers the sport.
Yeah.
And you know what you're talking about. You just make believe you don't know.
Well, first of all, we want to give you congratulations before we get to your guests here in studio, who've also spoken to many times. One of Hialeah's own, Aaron Aponte, the alien.
Hialeah Gardens.
He is joining us here as well. But Pete, congratulations, man! You were named the Boxing Manager of the Year by the Boxing Writers Association. That you've been nominated a few times, but that had to be absolutely cool that you finally broke through and got it this year. What does that mean?
Man, it means a lot because it's the writers that vote on it. And honestly, like other years when I'm nominated, like I know the other guys, right? Like the other top managers, they're my friends. We talk almost every day. People would think that we'd be adversarial, but it's like, I guess maybe like NFL agents. I mean, you have who you have, right? So that doesn't mean that you can't talk. And, we kind of have to toe the line as managers and keep the promoters in check. So there have been years where I'm like, oh man, this guy deserves it. He had a great year, or this guy deserves it. But 2022, I'm not going to lie. That if it didn't happen last year,
right? I
don't know what I would need to do between, George Kambosos with the record payday, 2 paydays against Devin Haney.
Yep.
Xander became at 19 the NABO and NABF champion. Aaron, he keeps moving forward, fought on the Canelo Triple G card against undefeated, one of Canelo's guys. Unbelievable fight. We'll get to that. Franchone Cruz DeZern, first female at 168 to be undisputed. All the belts, beat Ellen Cederroos on April 30th, and the first Ring Magazine champion at that weight class. Chris Van Heerden fought Connor Ben. Emmanuel Tego fought Ryan Garcia. I mean, seriously, if it wasn't last year, I don't.
Yeah, a lot of deals, dude.
I give up. But because the writers vote, even the ones that don't like me voted for me.
Right.
Because
does that happen? You have brothers that don't like you? You have a petty list too? You don't have to name names. I'm just curious.
There's some envy.
Stepping into his realm of life.
He knows a lot of these guys,
right.
And they can be petty. They all want to break news.
Yeah,
and it's like it's a hard thing to try to balance and juggle who you give this to, and of course, none of us ever give anything out.
Right.
I mean, nothing ever leaks.
Nah, nothing leaks, dude.
But it's like a fine line who you kind of dish it off to, and then they know it.
They hold
you.
They hold it against.
So how have you thought the landscape has kind of gone? Because you were there on you've seen, I mean, everything from Triller trying to get into the game over the last couple of years to the zones, like 2 versions of we're gonna break pay-per-view, now we're back in pay-per-view and all that stuff. Like, how is everything still with all the changes that people feel like are going to happen with boxing? Does most of it kind of still stay the same as far as the way the business is going, or are there a lot of different avenues to go through?
I mean, there's more platforms. So I love the fact that DAZN invested a lot of money into boxing, because that's just great for fighters. And something Leroy was talking about off air before we came on was the frustration about fighters not being able to fight and the fights that we want to see being made. But we need platforms, right? But then the model changed, a couple of decades ago. And when one promoter has this network and another promoter has this network, right? It makes it difficult because only one promoter could get that revenue. There have been few times when both promoters, in a case where there's going to be a massive fight, they understand that they can share that pay-per-view.
Like Fury Wilder.
Yeah, they know there's room to work together. All of a sudden, Al Heyman and Top Rank can work together.
Right.
And it's not a problem.
Because it's so much money. Like you don't want to be the reason why people don't get their money.
Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Don King and Bob Arum became friends again.
Right.
And that was 20-something years ago. So they were, when it works, they find a way to make it work. But at the end of the day, it's about money, and everybody there's only a couple of revenue streams. Right. It's broadcast rights, whether that's going to be a rights fee or a pay-per-view, and gate revenue. Sponsorship's fairly small. So other than those two, those two avenues for revenue, like what is there, right? So the promoters kind of try to hang on to that. And when you make promises, when you have to pay a Canelo $30 million, win, lose, or draw, well, someone's got to get that money, right? Like someone's got to be in control of how they're getting that money. So for, if the zone wanted to shift, right, say they use that as a loss leader, right, to get subscriptions, but then they realize, well, maybe we're going to need to turn this into a pay-per-view. Okay, so be it. I mean, they got to make money. I'd rather they keep the platform going, keep boxing moving along,
then fold up and just
yeah, exactly. Otherwise, they could just be like, you know what, this was a great experiment. Look, HBO made a decision. It's probably been 4 years now.
Yep.
And people were shocked when they decided to get out of boxing, but it's really just numbers. And for them, they're like, do we want to keep spending $100 million on rights fees on boxing per year? That doesn't bring us the subscriptions that we want. Or do we want to throw it into Game of Thrones? Do we want to throw it into all this original programming, which gets us the subscriptions? It was a no-brainer for them.
It's pretty amazing that when you think about boxing and the fight game in general, it's the only sport that doesn't make their money off advertising.
Right.
Everything else is advertisement driven, or, you got with football, you got all the different television companies fighting for the rights.
Right.
And boxing is not really like that. It's you're going to pay the fighter to have this fight, and then you're going to try to sell a fight to make up that money. There is no Nike coming in. There is no So
it's like I said, 2 revenue streams, and a lot of the promoters will take a site fee from the venue and just basically give me $1 million, keep all the tickets, sell your tickets.
Right.
Because the venues in Las Vegas, well, they use those because they know that they're going to get people into the casino.
Right.
So they know the drop on the night of fights is going to make up for whatever they pay for the site fee.
Right.
Then the promoter doesn't have to sell tickets. Then they just focus on selling that pay-per-view.
Right.
So Aaron Aponte is joining us here as well with
the Alien King.
The Alien King. One of
6 wins, no losses, and a draw.
One of Peter's young fights. Man, I remember when you
with
were
Matchroom.
I remember when you were training for the Olympics before like COVID happened, and you decided to go pro. We saw. I don't know if it was one of your first or second fights. We saw you on the Canelo card then when he was down here. Jay Balvin take him out. And we were like, you were so early on in the card, and you hear this rock because you had the whole town here to see you at Hard Rock Stadium, man. But monster fight for you last time around, proved a lot to a lot of people. How do you feel things are going? This many fights in, getting ready for a fight on February 4th at MSG. The decision at only 21 years old, being where you're at right now. Are you feeling good about the path you're on right now? And how excited are you to be back in the ring coming up in a couple weeks?
I'm excited that everybody's been, pushing me and preparing me for the challenges I've been taking. And I haven't been afraid of taking any challenges yet. Last fight I had an undefeated fighter. It ended in a draw, not what we wanted, but we keep going and we get better from these situations. And I feel like the people around me are putting me in situations where are making me better.
So many guys, though, listen, man, you'll get in there, and guys at your age, they're not tested, and you're getting tested early on. Like you're in dog fights, coming up from knockdowns to even out a draw against a highly touted prospect, and that don't you feel like that's going to make you better in the end early on? Like you're already in these dog fights so early into your career.
Yeah, of course. These are the fights that are going to start. I feel like I'm already building a legacy of the kind of fighter I am, a fighter with heart, never give up. Last fight showed that I'm not a quitter. I'm going to fight all the way through. And, it's only up from here.
For people who don't know about your story, Aaron, you have your gym with your family over in Hialeah, and you guys, train a bunch of guys.
Hialeah Gardens. There's also Aaron Aponte Day in Hialeah Gardens.
Can you tell a little
KO Fitness?
Tell a little bit about the the journey that you've taken to get here, being trained down here in South Florida.
The journey started when I was 9. I started with a Cuban trainer that I really got into boxing just because. I wanted to hit the ball harder for baseball. I was a baseball player, and I got into that. And, I fell in love with the sport. I was doing baseball and boxing until from 9 to 13. Then at 13, I decided I was going to be a boxer. and we continued from there.
Are you still designing your own trunks? Because Alien King, one of the coolest nicknames already, and you have like the logo. It is an alien with a crown on it. Leroy, are you still doing it? Like you told me, I think early on that you designed your own deals for what you come to the ring with.
Yeah, of course. We always design everything that we go in with. You know, I always have a say. I always tell the person, I want it this color. I want it to look like this. And then I usually get the shoes. I'll design them around the shoes, and it's a process.
When you have these monster platforms that you're coming up on, what is it that you want to do every time as far as just, making a statement? Because, so many fighters on the card, they're there for, more established names who are further down in their careers. Like, how do you like to stand out on cards like this?
First of all, I feel like my personality really shows when I'm fighting and when I'm, just being myself. Being myself, I feel like everybody notices me. You get me? And also when I'm fighting, I want to be exciting. I want to make a fight happen. And I feel like last fight, that's what really happened. There was a big fight that started going out. And, I'm an exciting fighter. And I feel like I showed that.
Well, let me say this about the last fight, right? Because Aaron stepped up, and like you were alluding to, you don't fight another undefeated fighter that's like not. It doesn't. Guys go out of their way to avoid that in this day and age,
right? Because you don't want to put it all on the line so soon in your career.
But how do you know who you are? And I've been
tested.
doing 29 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Newly inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame too. Okay, just saying.
I was gonna get to that.
29 years, okay, and the hardest thing that we face as managers, and the hardest thing that promoters face, is guys don't want to fight high level competition because they've been conditioned to think that a loss is a death sentence.
Right.
Because television promoters always want to be,
my guy's undefeated.
Right?
Right.
That's not how it was 30, 40 years ago in boxing.
Nope.
And there's nothing wrong with having a blemish on your record. There's nothing wrong with a loss or a draw, as long as
you look good.
Right.
Right.
Aaron learned. He walked out of there with a draw, but he learned. And I was sitting there just inches from the ring, sitting next to Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, and Kevin Rooney, the matchmaker. And these guys were just, they were rooting. Usually it's like, there's like no cheering in the press box, right?
Yeah.
Usually there's not a lot of rooting at, like inside the corral at ringside. Man, Aaron showed them something that after the fight, and Aaron will tell you, Aaron's very humble, right? So he's not going to say these things, but Eddie came in the back after and said, I'm not releasing you. I want you back immediately. Right. And he's like, you could have just stayed in the middle of the ring, boxed this guy's ears off like you did for the first 3 rounds, and you would have coasted to an 8-round decision, maybe even stop him.
Took a chance.
But Aaron showed that he has that dog in him.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron was knocked down. He showed he had heart. He got up. For a couple of moments, I don't think Aaron knew where he was, but he recovered and he came back out. And you can't get any more than a draw than a split draw. One judge had it for the other guy. One judge had it for Aaron. One judge had it even.
Right.
So, I mean,
very close fight,
but it was a great learning experience. And this is one of Canelo's prospects.
Yeah.
And we agreed that both guys will go at it. And, the first thing Aaron said after the fight is like, I want to fight him again. And same thing the other guy said, right?
Right.
And so we're looking at doing that maybe after 2-3 more fights, once there's something kind of bigger on the line.
Absolutely.
Have them come back and do it again.
We'll take a quick break. We'll continue on with you guys in a little bit. Back with more on 560 WQM right after this. And let me ask you a couple of things before we get back into it. Some things going on in the sport right now. Big news this week in the UFC is Francis Ngannou did not re-sign with the UFC. He's a free agent. A lot of people are logically saying he's going to go over to boxing. And I'm wondering, as a guy who's in the nitty-gritty of the business, how much do you think a guy like Francis Ngannou, how much thirst is there for that in the sport, whether he were to fight Tyson Fury or whether he were to fight Deontay Wilder? How much do you think the UFC heavyweight champion coming over to the sport of boxing, how much interest would there be from other promoters in that? And how much money you think he could make on the good end of it?
I mean, from the novelty perspective, right out of the gate, I think it would interest people. But me personally, and like real boxing purists, and I mean, I think you'd have to see him fight a couple of fights and see what he looks like. It's a different ball game. I mean, it's a whole different type of fighting. I mean, there's no takedowns, there's no jiu-jitsu, there's no kicking. I mean, you're boxing.
He's a guy though that uses just striker anyway.
He's
right?
like the best
So
power. He's the Deontay Wilder of the UFC.
Right.
But my thinking, like, here's the thing that I would say with him is that he looks like a monster in the UFC because he's 6'4". And I think like people would be shocked if they saw him against Tyson Fury, how much smaller he would look, because Tyson Fury looks like a freak.
6'8", 6'9".
Yeah, he's a giant.
Right.
Wilder would interest me a little bit more. I feel like while I still Wilder would still beat him, it's a different sport. At least it's like the best power puncher in boxing versus the best power puncher in UFC. And like you said, novelty. I would be wondering, like, what would that do? Could that do a ton of business?
I don't know how his power is going to translate with 10-ounce gloves. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's just a different environment. You're talking 10 3-minute rounds or 12 3-minute rounds of just purely throwing punches.
Right.
There is no time off. There's, I don't know. I think that
you can't lean on somebody on the floor and take a breather.
Right.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, look, maybe the power could get him by, but you still have to have boxing skills.
Right.
Yeah.
But other than skill set, like just from the money aspect, do you feel like somebody would invest in something? Like could promoters be convinced to invest that, just thinking that the public would want to buy it, like Conor versus Floyd?
I'm sure we're going to find out soon.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure they're not sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
But I mean, it's something that really I think about, to be honest with you.
And then one other thing that's kind of got everybody's interest right now in the sport, Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. They said they're going to fight in April. Do you feel like that fight is going to happen? Things are always flaring up with boxing. Do you feel like that's a fight that does happen? And if so, how much interest do you think that's going to garner?
I hope so, because Ryan's dad, Henry, called me last night, like at 9 p.m., and his manager, Lupe, and they asked me if I could help them find a place down here, because they're going to do camp down here.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So
cool.
They're going to do camp in Miami.
One of the things I was curious about this, because we were talking about MMA versus boxing. The one biggest difference that I've seen between the two is footwork.
Mm-hmm.
Like, boxers have so much better footwork that they can move with their legs and their lower body, whereas an MMA guy would just sit there and try to brawl and move his head.
I'll let Aaron talk about footwork, because this guy had over 100 amateur fights, and he's the professional.
Well, I want to ask you about that, Aaron, because the idea like Ryan's coming down here, did something happen with COVID? Because, like, listen, I feel like the talent over here, like yourself and everybody's been overlooked for a very, very long time. People always talk Cali and Texas and New York and Philly. South Florida, like, all of a sudden we're seeing something over the last 3-4 years where people are noticing, damn, the talent down here is very good. And you're seeing, big time guys that want to come down here and train. Have you noticed a shift here over the last few years in that too?
Yeah, I definitely do. You have fighters like Gervonta Davis coming down also, so Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis will be in Miami. I think Gervonta Davis trained in like Coral Springs.
Right.
Coral Springs area. Yeah, he's right next to his house. And, we have a lot of great fighters here. There's a lot of good talent, and everybody wants to go where the best work is. So right now, the best work is in South Florida, and that's why everybody's coming down. Could
you speak to the idea of just what people don't see as far as like you guys, the sparring that you guys have as young kids coming up and just tooling yourself to get ready for like these moments that are going to be on big stages and things like that, but just the same guys that you're in the ring with before we see them on ESPN, before we see you on DAZN coming up on February 4th, any of that stuff?
I mean, Aaron sparred with Gervonta. Was after your second fight?
Yeah. After my second fight, I sparred with Gervonta Davis. And I've also sparred with another one called Michel Rivera.
Yeah. It looks like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, it looks
That's his whole
Muhammad
thing.
Ali's. Yeah. And I've had great sparring with lots of top talent. The people who you see on TV, those I sparred those people, most of them. And, it's just great opportunities that South Florida just keeps providing.
Did you have a bunch of guys from the Heat coming to your gym for a while? Like, wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, we had a couple of Heat players in our gym.
Wasn't Duncan Robinson throwing hands in there?
Yeah, we had Duncan Robinson.
What? Why are you looking at me like that? Dunks can't get in some rounds?
I would love to see you two go at it. Like headgear, 10-ounce gloves.
Listen,
I would love that.
Live on here.
I've been
Live
waiting to kick his
YouTube.
ass for 5 years.
What?
We'll do three rounds.
Don't give him ideas. You're doing the promoting thing. Don't.
3
Hey,
rounds.
I'll
we'll
even,
get judges.
I'll even wear my big shoulder pads.
Wow. So Dunk's got hands. What's the deal? Like, who's got the? Who?
See, he ships right back.
Yeah,
He's avoiding the fight. He's avoiding the fight. He doesn't want it.
Yep.
But yeah, all the basketball players we was teaching them how to fight, they was a little slow. They was trying to, what was it called? They said the conditioning was getting them right.
Athletes are fascinated by fighters, though, right? Like that's a thing where like they just love. I don't know if it's the grind you guys go through, but a lot of professional athletes just seem to glam onto that. All the work that you do, they really gravitate towards the fight world.
Yeah, everybody loves the fight world. It's just so exciting. You know, boxing is the only, well, fighting is the only thing where you could be like, oh, I beat you up and that's it. Like if you're playing basketball, oh, you beat me in basketball, but you can't beat me. You can't say that. You can't say in boxing, oh, I beat you in boxing, but I could beat you in basketball. Nobody cares that you could beat me in basketball.
Yeah.
Man, you guys got to catch Aaron. He's coming up February 4th on DAZN. He is going to be on the Amanda Serrano card so check him on out. Before we get you guys out of here, because we are running out of time, Peter, you recently announced that you are going into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, same class as Roy Jones Jr., Pensacola's own.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, man?
It means a lot. I started my journey in boxing down here 29 years ago, worked with Don King. And I mean, I was 22 years old, right? So I'm going to be 51. I mean, I've been at it a long time and going,
You're a baby.
on this journey. I'll say this. So, you always hear about, and this, I was thinking about this because I had my family come with me for the announcement. The induction is going to be June 30th in Tampa. And it's like my family was with me, right? And I'm looking at them and I realize, in boxing, you got a lot of dads, right? It's always boxing dads, right? And you always hear they're always so many trainers that train dads and teachers and mentors. And I had the same thing. I was looking at my dad, Richie Kahn, sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, Richie Kahn Jr.,
Right.
And I realized that although it's not the same, it's like my method of operation and my mindset is the same thing. So I attribute a lot of that success to him and the way that he's guided me. And it meant a lot for me. Yeah, the International Boxing Hall of Fame is like, that's where you want to be, maybe in 10 more years, and I'll get there. But Florida is definitely a big deal for me.
Right. That's really cool, man. Well, boys, we appreciate you guys stopping in and talking some fight with us. We appreciate it. Again, catch Aaron Aponte, Hialeah Gardens own the Alien King. He is coming on up. Go follow him on Instagram too, Aaron Alien King. Go check him out, guys. Go support our own down here, as we got a lot of great fight talent. Peter manages a lot of it down here. 2 South Florida guys who are doing good work down here. You guys know that I love the fight game down here. It means a lot to me. So it's great to see you guys doing big things. And we're looking forward to seeing you coming up on February 4th, Aaron, man. Just best of luck. Have a good, healthy camp the rest of the way. Yep. And we want to see you. What are we going to see, man? What's coming up on this in a couple of weeks?
In a couple of weeks?
What are we going to see in this ring? What's happening?
What are we going to see in this ring?
Yeah, what are we going to see?
We're going to see a knockout.
Yes.
We're going to see a knockout. He's going to sleep.
I love it. All right, boys. Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for tuning in today. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. We don't have to fight, dude. You don't have to make that. That doesn't have to be a thing.
Yes, you do.
I don't like how you're. I don't like how. I don't like how intrigued you got.
Yes, you do.
You have been a troublemaker lately. All right, Your Honor.
Come on, we'll put the
headgear
on.
Listen, my money's on Brendan. I'm just trying to get you hyped up.
Your money's on him.
Now you're really.
You go to KO Fitness. He'll come to us over at Sweatbox.
I see what's happening here.
I'm luring you in.
A businessman.
All I gotta do to beat him is wave a piece of cheesecake at him before the fight starts.
Tobin's heavy-handed.
We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.